I wish you well as Leader of the Opposition. I now call... Can I first of all welcome the Leader of the Opposition? I wish you well as Leader of the Opposition. I now call Dame Caroline Dinenage.
Question number 1, Mr. Speaker.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, can I begin by congratulating President-elect Trump on his historic election victory. As the closest of allies, the UK and US will continue to work together to protect our shared values of freedom and democracy. And having had dinner with President-elect Trump just a few weeks ago, I look forward to working with him in the years to come. May I also welcome the Leader of the Opposition to her place. My 4th Tory leader in 4.5 years. But I do look forward to working with her in the interests of the British public. Mr. Speaker, this weekend is Remembrance Sunday, and people across the country will come together to pay solemn tribute to those who made the ultimate sacrifice, defending the values and freedoms that we enjoy today. And I'm sure the entire House will join me in paying tribute to them. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Dame Caroline.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. My constituent Susan is going to miss out on her winter fuel allowance this winter because she's just £10 above the pension credit threshold. So as well as losing out on this vital money to keep her house warm, she also doesn't get the £150 warm home discount. She doesn't get the £169 free TV licence or free NHS prescriptions. For the sake of a tenner, Prime Minister, is this fair?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we passed a budget which was to fix the foundations of this country and to rebuild our country. And one of the issues we had to confront was the £22 billion black hole that was left by the last government. We've taken the tough decisions. That will stabilise our economy. That means we can commit to the triple lock, and that means that pensioners will be better off seeing the increase in their pension they would have been under the party opposite.
Jacob Collier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Every week I meet hard-working families in Burton and Uttoxeter who are juggling raising their children and their family finances. When they hear the party opposite and its new leader say that maternity pay has gone too far, they are terrified about what this means for them. To ease the worry felt by thousands of hard-working families, can the Prime Minister please commit that he has no plans to change maternity pay or to roll back the hard-won rights of working families?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his question. He's a champion for families in his constituency. My answer is simple, yes. And I don't agree with the Leader of the Opposition when she says that maternity pay is excessive and that it's gone too far.
I come to the Leader of the Opposition, Kemi.
Mr. Speaker, can I thank the Prime Minister for his almost warm welcome, and can I also echo the comments that he has made. It is an immense privilege and the honour of my life to lead the Conservative Party, and I look forward to joining him at the Cenotaph this Remembrance Sunday. As Leader of His Majesty's Opposition, I will be taking a different approach to the last opposition by being a constructive opposition. And so I would like to start by congratulating President-elect Trump on his impressive victory this morning. The Prime Minister and the Foreign Secretary met him in September. Did the Foreign Secretary take that opportunity to apologise for making derogatory and scatological references, including, and I quote, Trump is not only a woman-hating, neo-Nazi sympathising sociopath, he is also a profound threat to the international order. And if he did not apologise, will the Prime Minister do so now on his behalf?
Mr. Speaker, there will be many issues on which the Leader of the Opposition and I disagree, but there will be issues that do unite this House on national security and Ukraine, and I do look forward to working closely with her on that, and I will provide her with the information that she needs to discharge her duties. That's the right thing for the country, and it's far more important than party politics. And the Foreign Secretary and I did meet President-elect Trump just a few weeks ago for dinner for about a couple of hours, and we discussed a number of issues of global significance. It was a very constructive exercise.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister did not distance himself from the remarks made by the Foreign Secretary, and I'm very sure that President Trump will soon be calling to thank him for sending all of those North London Labour activists to campaign for his opponent. Given that most of his cabinet signed a motion to ban President Trump from addressing Parliament, will the Prime Minister show that he and his government can be more than student politicians by asking the Speaker to extend? Can they show that they can be more than student politicians?
Order. Mr. Perkins, I don't need to anymore. Your voice curries, it's like mine, too loud.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Prime Minister show that he and his government can be more than student politicians by asking you, Mr. Speaker, to extend an invitation to President Trump to address Parliament on his next visit?
I think the Leader of the Opposition is giving a masterclass in student politics. But seriously, Mr. Speaker, we live in probably a more volatile world than we've lived in for many decades. It is absolutely crucial that we have a strong relationship, that strong special relationship forged in difficult circumstances between the US and the UK. We will continue to work, as we have done in the 4 months in government, on issues of security, our economy and global conflict.
Mr. Speaker, he does not answer the questions, just read the lines the officials have prepared for him. It doesn't sound like he wants to invite President-elect Trump to Parliament. He needs to look after the special relationship. The US is our single biggest trade partner. Given the risk of increased tariffs on UK exports, which threaten our manufacturing sector, will the Prime Minister commit now to continue the negotiations on our free trade agreement with the US, which the Biden administration cancelled when they came into office?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, of course we will discuss issues of our economy with the President-elect, as we already have done. Economy, security and global conflict are issues of real significance that ought to unite this House. But when it comes to the economy, what we've done with our budget is to fix the foundations after 14 years. Return to economic stability of the £23 million black hole. We've protected the pay slips of working people. We've done the single biggest investment in our country for a generation in the NHS, in schools and homes. We've given a pay rise to the 3 million lowest paid. Now, if she's opposed to that investment or the pay rise for working people, she's a straight talker as I understand it, perhaps she should say so.
Mr. Speaker, discuss, chat. He has no plans whatsoever. No plans whatsoever for building on the special relationship. He needs to realise that we in this country rely on our single biggest trade partner. President Trump is also right to argue that Europe needs to increase its defence spending. The last Conservative government committed to raising defence spending to 2.5% by 2030. Will the Prime Minister finally match this commitment?
Mr. Speaker, there is no more important duty than keeping the people of this country safe. And it was the Labour government that signed the NATO treaty in the first place, and we are strong supporters. We have a strategic defence review. We are committed to 2.5%. Well, I would remind the last time 2.5 was met was under the last Labour government. 14 years, and they never did it once. Last year, the NAO identified a £17 billion black hole in the MOD finances. The former Defence Secretary said the previous government hollowed out the armed forces, and the plan they put forward at the election was pure fantasy.
Mr. Speaker, he will not make that commitment. That is very clear. All that he is doing,
I'm going to hear the questions. If the people who don't want to hear it, they can leave now. Come on.
Mr. Speaker, he will not make that commitment, and yet the world is getting more dangerous. His Chancellor's budget did not even mention defence. The Chancellor's budget last week was a copy and paste of Burdenock. It turns out that a high spending, high borrowing, high inflation approach is less popular than she may have thought. May I suggest he now urge her to change course, or is he determined to be a one-term leader?
Prime Minister!
The one thing I learned as leader of the opposition is it's a good idea to listen to what the government is actually saying. I think she just said that defence wasn't mentioned in the budget. It was 7 days ago that it was absolutely clear and central to the budget, as was economic growth. We are fixing the foundations. We're giving a pay rise to millions of people. We're picking up the mess that they left, 22 billion, and a tax rise and a pay rise for working people. And I haven't heard yet her welcome that pay rise for the 3 million lowest paid workers. Does she now welcome it? Does she stick to her previous policy that it's excessive?
Yeah.
Mr. Speaker, I was the one who raised the minimum wage last year as Business Secretary. I have a strong record on this, but we need to make sure that we balance the books. His scripted lines are showing that he has not even listened to the budget himself. So I will try a different question. Perhaps he can give something that is unscripted to the people watching. Farmers across the United Kingdom... Mr. Speaker... Mr. Speaker... Mr.
Order! I don't need any help. Can I just say, if somebody wants to leave, I'll be helping them do that. I'm going to hear the question, and I certainly want to hear the answer as well. So please, let's have some courtesy.
Mr. Speaker, we have heard him repeat the lines on the television, fixing the foundations and so on. But what does he say, over and over again, but what does he say to farmers who are facing uncertainty about their futures as a result of the increased taxes announced by the Chancellor? I am very clear that we would reverse Labour's cruel family farms tax. What can he say now to reassure the farming community, who provide security for the whole nation?
Prime Minister.
I'm happy to help the leader of the opposition. If she's going to complain about scripted answers, it's probably best not to read that from a script. What I will say about farmers is that I'm glad she's raised farmers, because the budget last week put £5 billion over the next 2 years into farming. That's the single biggest increase, unlike the 300 million, which was underspent under the last government. When it comes to inheritance, the vast majority of farmers will be unaffected, as she well knows, as they well know. But that budget was about fixing foundations, fixing the whole 22 billion that they left, and investing in the future of our country, investing in our NHS, investing in our schools, our hospitals, our homes. And I'm proud that that's the investment we're making. And if they oppose it, they should go out there and tell their constituents they're against that investment in the future of our country. That's the difference. A Labour government taking us forward. They're stuck in the past.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I'm going to hear Matthew Patrick.
Mr. Speaker, Emily left her ex, but the abuse did not stop. He stayed in their home, cancelled the mortgage contributions and destroyed her credit score. Now she cannot even take out a mobile phone contract. Surviving economic abuse in UK finance have made progress tackling this issue, but more has to be done. Will the Prime Minister and his government work with me to introduce new provisions so that we can restore the credit files for survivors of economic abuse like Emily?
Yeah. Well, I thank my honourable friend for raising this really important issue, because economic abuse has a devastating impact on victims, leaving them vulnerable and isolated. And we are committed to ending this national emergency and keeping women safe from domestic abuse, harassment and stalking. And, Mr. Speaker, that includes £200,000 this year to the charity Surviving Economic Abuse, and HMRC have launched an online tool to help charities and businesses identify and respond to economic abuse. I'll make sure he has a meeting with the relevant minister.
Leader of the Liberal Democrats, Sir Ed Davey.
Can I join the Prime Minister in his comments about Remembrance Sunday? We must always remember the brave British men and women who gave their lives for our country. And can I join him in welcoming the Conservative leader to her place? And can I congratulate her on becoming the first black leader of a UK-wide party, a major and historic achievement? Mr. Speaker, President-elect Trump praised Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine. And I quote, he called it genius. He also said he would encourage Russia to do whatever the hell they want to NATO allies. So what action is the Prime Minister taking to encourage a Trump presidency to change its mind? Because otherwise it's a huge threat to global security and to national security in the UK. Does he agree with me that the US will not oppose President Putin and support our brave Ukrainian allies? The UK must lead in Europe so that together we do.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very proud that in this House we are united on the question of Ukraine and clear about Russian aggression, and we will continue to do so. I've long taken the view that the only winner, if we are divided in this House, is Putin, and I'm not prepared to let that happen. Our relationship with the US is a strong relationship forged in very difficult circumstances historically. It remains as strong today as it was when it was first forged, and I look forward to working with President-elect Trump to ensure that relationship stays the special relationship.
Sir Ed Davey.
I'm grateful for the Prime Minister's comments on Ukraine, but Donald Trump has also said that trade wars are good. He calls himself tariff man. People are really worried that Trump trade wars and tariff will damage our economy, damage businesses, and hit the cost of living here in the UK. So, given this, does the Prime Minister recognise that it's more urgent than ever that we support our British economy by getting rid of the damaging trade barriers with Europe put in place by the Conservatives?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, as you will know, we've put the economy centrepiece to our budget, and we will do everything that we need to do to ensure our economy grows, and that's measured in living standards going up for working people across the country. Thank you.
Alex Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There are so many families across Aldershot and Farnborough who have struggled for years to get their children the need they help with special educational needs. It's therefore shameful to read misguided claims that autistic people may well get better treatment and receive economic privileges and protections made by the Leader of the Opposition. Will the Prime Minister stand with families of autistic children and distance this government from those awful words?
Mr. Speaker, I'll leave the Leader of the Opposition to respond to those words. As the recent NAO report exposed, under the previous government, children with SEND were being failed by the system, and this has come up, I think, now 5 times in the last 2 or 3 weeks at PMQs. It's clearly a serious issue. Our focus will be ensuring every child receives the right support to succeed in their education.
Sosa Eastwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Prime Minister, Northern Ireland is considered one of the most dangerous places in Europe to be a woman. In the last 4 years, 24 women have been killed. One of the most dangerous places for women and girls is online. I also want to pay tribute to the work of Belfast and Lisburn Women's Aid, who are tireless in their advocacy for women. So what is this government doing to keep women and girls safe online, not just in Lagan Valley, but right across the United Kingdom?
Prime Minister.
Well, the right honourable member is right to draw attention to this issue. Misogyny and abuse, both online and offline, causes horrendous harm to women and girls across the UK. And can I just commend her honesty and bravery in speaking out about her own experiences and her dedication to creating safe spaces for women in her constituency. We must create a safer world online for women and girls through the Online Safety Act, mitigating the risk of illegal content and activity which is abusive or incites hatred.
Bill Cole.
Everyone in Southwark will benefit from the positive measures in the budget last week, especially the thousands on the minimum wage getting a real terms increase to help themselves, help their families and help the economy. But the new leader of the Tory party, this week's leader, is on record as saying she wants to scrap it, having seemingly learnt nothing from July. Will the Prime Minister pledge to protect the minimum wage and increase it in this Parliament as finances allow?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the last Labour government transformed the labour market with the national minimum wage, something which was opposed by the party opposite at the time. And sadly, they don't seem to have changed. I was surprised by the comments of the Leader of the Opposition. I was surprised to see the new Shadow Business Secretary say the minimum wage, and this is a quote, something legislators pass to make themselves feel good. I disagree, and I'm very proud of the fact that this Labour government has raised wages for 3 million of low-paid workers, and I expect the party opposite to welcome that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After 14 years shaping the UK's long-term strategies for life science, agri-tech, fusion and space, I welcome the government's industrial strategy. But too many of our great companies are being bought out by our competitors. To build the industries of tomorrow here, we need to unlock some of the hundreds of billions in UK pension funds in the city, only 3% of which are now investing in UK equities. With the new Lord Mayor making this a priority and the Mansion House speech imminent, will the new government commit to see through the last government's reforms to unlock British capital for British R&D growth?
Well, I thank him for welcoming the industrial strategy, and I do know this is an issue close to his heart that he has spoken about and acted on for many years. The budget sees record numbers of R&D investment with over 20 billion next year, including over 2 billion to support our world-leading life sciences sector. And through the British Growth Partnership, we'll crowd in pension funds investment to support innovative business. And we've launched our landmark pensions review to unlock the billions of investment into the UK and boost growth and living standards across the country. Thank you.
Catherine Fuchs.
Mr. Speaker, as the Chancellor said last week, we were left a toxic legacy by the previous government, including rivers filled with polluted waste. Will the Prime Minister put the River Wye into special measures by designating it a water protection zone? And will he meet with me and the excellent cross-border Wye Catchment Partnership to deliver their plan to clean up the Wye?
Prime Minister.
The River Wye is one of our most important, iconic rivers, and we are working closely with the Welsh Government on this pressing issue. A destruction of our waterways should never have been allowed, and that's why we launched a Water Commission to attract investment and speed up infrastructure delivery. And we introduced legislation to enable tougher penalties and severe fines to crack down on polluters. I will make sure that she gets a meeting with the relevant minister.
Power of the House to Edward Lee.
As a good lawyer, I know the Prime Minister will want to listen to the evidence. So if the evidence mounts from experts in organisations such as the NFU that smaller family farms of average size, 250 acres, are going to be severely impacted by this tax, in a spirit of compromise, will he listen to the evidence, keep an open mind, and perhaps be prepared to raise the thresholds to preserve our family farms?
Mr. Speaker, we are listening to farmers, and the Environment Secretary and the Treasury Ministers met with the NFU on Monday of this week. We have taken a fair and balanced approach. The vast majority of farms will not be affected by this. But what I will also say is, having grown up in a rural community, I know that rural communities also need an NHS that's back on its feet. They also need schools that their children can go to and homes that their families can afford to live in. But we will continue to talk to the NFU and others.
Eric Glendon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This week, the Leader of the Opposition told us that any outrage at suitcases full of wine and karaoke machines in Downing Street, whilst people across the country were told to stay at home, was all overblown. For the people and businesses in my constituency who followed the rules, many of us at great personal cost, this is an insult. Will the Prime Minister join me in ensuring that as a country we learn the lessons from COVID, and as a party the Conservatives learn the lessons of their behaviour too?
Mr. Speaker, across the country people made enormous sacrifices during COVID. They missed weddings, births, deaths. Really important moments in their lives and their families' lives. In doing so, they saved the lives of people they will probably never meet. That was a collective effort, and unfortunately the party opposite who set the rules did not follow them themselves. It was a betrayal of those that did, and I think the Leader of the Opposition was wrong to describe the public anger and upset as overblown. I'm sure she'll want to clarify that at the first opportunity.
Cyfarwydd, Glan Horse Nursing Home is in my constituency in Ysmôn. Tell me that the budget changes mean a 10% increase in their cost. That's a staggering £127,500 extra in-year cost. Will the Prime Minister reconsider the rise in the employers' national insurance?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, what we did in the budget last week was to ensure that no one would face tax rises in their pay slip. We had to deal with the £22 billion black hole, but when we did so, we protected the smallest businesses and charities. We doubled the employment allowance to £10,500. That means that 40% of employers won't pay employers' NICs. Companies with 4 employees or less on a minimum wage will pay no employer NICs at all, and half of businesses that pay NICs will see no change or pay less after the budget. Thank you.
Bill Brickle.
Yeah, my constituents in Bolton West were pleased to hear last week's budget prioritise investment in public infrastructure, including important projects such as the electrification of the Wigan to Bolton railway line, which will deliver more reliable and greener journeys. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that investment in the key infrastructure of towns such as Horwich, West Horton, Blackrod and Bolton is the only way to deliver economic growth and prosperity for all?
Prime Minister.
Well, my honourable friend is a champion for the North West, and the budget secured investment for vital transport projects to transform connectivity across the north of England and drive economic growth. And that includes completing the Wigan to Bolton electrification, a really important momentum on the Northern Powerhouse Rail. Over £5 billion to support everyday journeys for working people. By restoring economic stability, increasing investment, we're taking our country forward.
Victoria Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Swan Youth Project in Berkhamsted is an incredible drop-in centre that intervenes to bring hope and a better future to teenagers like Lex and Megan who have been facing anxiety, depression and long mental health waiting lists, as well as families coping with SEND. They've already written to the Treasury saying that they're worried about getting the funds that they need as our communities face a tough winter and grants are depleting. Parole, the manager, also assures me that she makes a mean curry and would welcome the Prime Minister. So will the Prime Minister join me to discuss their concerns and ensure that organisations in the third sector like theirs get the support that they need as they work tirelessly for our communities?
Prime Minister.
She'll be pleased to know I've been to Berkhamsted a number of times. We've got very good friends who live there, and I want to pay tribute to the work of the Swan Youth Project, because too many young people, she's cited some, are struggling with mental health and not receiving the support that they need. And that's why we will recruit an additional 8,500 mental health workers and are introducing reforms to the Mental Health Act, long overdue, and that's happening today. Of course, we will also put more money into SEND, but we also need to look at reforming SEND, something that I think and hope will be supported across this House, and I'll make sure she gets a meeting with the relevant ministers about that.
My right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, will know that after 14 years of Tory ideological hostility and cuts, our universities are in financial meltdown. In my own constituency of Norwich South, the University of East Anglia is having to make redundancies, as are many others. Our honourable friend, the Secretary of State for Education, has started to address the problem, but we need a longer-term solution that doesn't simply saddle more debt on our young people. So can my right honourable friend say how we can move to fix the foundations of higher education as we go forward?
Prime Minister.
I thank him for that question. He's right to raise higher education because we inherited a sector facing severe financial challenges. Universities have suffered real terms decline in their income, and the gap between disadvantaged students and their peers is the highest on record. We've had to take tough decisions to put that on a secure footing, but we are also taking the step of easing the living pressures by increasing the maintenance loans, which is worth £414 extra per year. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Alex Brooke.
Jo Hamilton, former sub-postmistress and constituent of North East Hampshire, has long been campaigning, along with Alan Bates, for compensation following the Horizon Post Office scandal. Can the Prime Minister give an exact time frame in which those who have been waiting over a decade might finally be compensated?
I'm grateful to her for raising this important issue because a commitment was made to properly compensate the victims of this scandal. Unfortunately, regrettably, having made that commitment, the party opposite, when in government, didn't allocate any money to that compensation. Her constituents will be pleased to know that we have changed the approach there. We've set out the compensation within the budget, a transparent budget, an accountable budget, and we'll make the payments just as soon as we can.
Torkel Crichton.
Speaker, may I quickly echo the Prime Minister's sentiments to that other son of Lewis, though I wish I'd woken up today in the Isle of Harris. My constituents there face long delays, cancellations and loss of service because of the SNP's incompetent handling of ferry procurement. In last week's budget, the Scottish Government received a record settlement. Can I urge the Prime Minister to tell Scottish ministers to use that to improve public service in Scotland, to invest in the NHS in the Highland Year, to build schools in places like Barra, and to finally fix the ferry fiasco?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, last week in the budget we delivered the largest settlement for the Scottish Government in real terms since devolution. That includes £3.4 billion through the Barnett formula, a fuel duty freeze, an increase in the national living wage, benefiting his constituencies and all those across Scotland. And the result of the budget is now clear. The SNP in power in Scotland have the powers, they now have the money, they've got no more excuses.
Mr. Speaker, does the Prime Minister really think it is acceptable for a backbench MP to suggest that the Leader of the Opposition represents white supremacy in blackface and is the most prominent member of white supremacy's black collaborator class, with all the race trait innuendo that carries? If he doesn't, why hasn't he removed the whip?
Prime Minister.
No, I don't.
John Slinger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a semi-retired violinist and rock musician asking a semi-retired multi-instrumentalist, I feel confident that the Prime Minister shares my belief in the importance of music education. Does my right honourable friend agree with me that as we unleash the potential of our country, we must invest in the educational infrastructure of creative arts subjects so that they're accessible to all? And will he take my constituency to see the great work of the schools there, despite the inheritance we received?
Prime Minister.
I'm not sure about the description semi-retired, although that may be the wish of the party opposite. But on music, what I do know from personal experiences, music, the creatives and art are really important for children and young people in terms of the pleasure it gives them, the knowledge, but the working in groups and the leadership, and that's why we are determined to ensure that they are counted subjects again within the curriculum, which will encourage many more schools to provide it within the curriculum and enrich the future of children and young people across the country.
James Leverley.
Before the election, he claimed that he would not put up national insurance contributions. He put it up. Before the election, he claimed he would scrap tuition fees. He put it up.
Yeah.
Before the election, he said he would not tax family farms. He's taxing family farms. Will he address his great reputation for dishonesty by making good on his commitment to close the Wethersfield Asylum Accommodation Centre in my constituency?
Mr. Speaker, we're keeping the promises we made in our manifesto. His problem is it can't add up. If it could add up, it might be down here rather than up there. I will take up the issue of his constituency.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Monday of this week marked the 7-year anniversary of my constituent Dr. Singh Johal's arbitrary detention in India. Can the Prime Minister assure me that he and his government will do all they can to secure his immediate release and bring him home?
Yes, we're absolutely committed to pushing the Government of India on this really important case. And the Foreign Secretary has raised it and will continue to do so. And we'll make sure that we speak to him as we do.
Right, that completes Prime Minister's questions.
Fran, bang bang bird's eye. Wow, now get a load of this. Chicken bursting with flavour. Try our new loaded burgers. The chicken chop from Bird's Eye.
So there it is. I want to stress, before I read out any of the comments that have come into the programme, that last week it was a very warm and friendly space, my inbox, during PMQs. There was a lot of comment about the majority of, it wasn't last week, was it? It was a week before. Anyway, Rishi Sunak's last outing as leader of the opposition. And I mention that because it proves that the people who message me at between 12 o'clock and 20 past on a Wednesday when PMQs is on the way are, as ever, a multiplicity of perspectives. I found one nice comment about Kemi Burdenock so far in my inbox, and that was from Michael, who said, I don't know why he said I hate to say it, but I did not did a good job, clear voice and some good points, 8 out of 10 for me. Before I read you some of the other comments that have come in since 12 o'clock, let's turn to our political editor, Natasha Clark. Can we begin with the defence? Two things occurred to me listening to that. Kemi Burdenock accused Keir Starmer of not knowing what was in Rachel Reeves's budget. And then, unless I've lost the plot completely, brackets again, brackets, unless I lost the plot completely, she missed the bit in the budget when Rachel Reeves did talk about defence.
Yeah, I think she missed the bit where she announced another £2.9 billion worth of cash for defence and talked about the defence review that we know is coming in a couple of months' time. So maybe she hasn't read the budget as quite as forensically as she should. But it's a bit bold to go in on your first PMQs with such a take to accuse him of being mentioning something. Feels a bit like an oversight. It feels a bit sloppy. She made some good points, but I think she made them really poorly. I think that it's fair enough if she wanted to go on Keir Starmer and his top team's comments about Donald Trump, about what they've said in the past. That's completely fair political capital to go on. Keir Starmer, I think, reacted really well to that.
That was statesman-like. That was statesman versus undergraduate. I mean, I'm not suggesting for a minute that this will still be true 6 months from now, but if I was in Kemi Burdenock, I'd be certain of two things. Number one, she's going to completely ignore me because she doesn't take advice from any, but two, she really needs to work out how she's going to deal with a statesman on the other side of the dispatch box as opposed to a sort of student union rival.
I totally agree with your student union politics. That's exactly how she came across to me as well. And, talking about scripted remarks, Prime Minister's question is half scripted remarks.
And she read some of her own,
she read her own,
which is just bizarre.
It is. I don't think that went down too well. I'm still just baffled that she went on Donald Trump. He is not popular in the United Kingdom. 18% of people, according to a poll from a couple of weeks ago, wanted Trump to win. Why on earth am I not sure you would go with that?
They're all listening to my show today. But I would suggest that she's really at her most confident when she's doing culture wars. So in some ways, this was an open goal, culture war-wise, with which to go after Starmer. But it was wrong for a whole heap of other reasons, not least that Starmer, if he wanted to get engaged in student union politics, could turn around and say, well, my top team have spoken very negatively about Donald Trump, but not as negatively as Donald Trump's top team. So I'm not quite sure what point it is that the leader of the opposition is making.
Yeah, and I think she was much stronger as she went onto the budget talk, when she was talking about farmers, when she was talking about branding at Labour's family farming tax. that felt a little bit more on safer ground. I felt like she sort of started to pull it back. But, I totally agree with Davey for once from Prime Minister's questions, and going on two things which I think were really, really well-made points about Russia and what the impact of Donald Trump coming back to the White House means for Ukraine, means for that war there. And his comments about trade wars, his comments about tariffs, bringing it back to the cost of living. These are things that I think will resonate with people. I don't think people are going to potentially remember those comments that David Lammy made about Trump being a neo-Nazi, a sociopath, all of that, like I said, political capital that she's welcome to make. I think it's fair to make them. I don't think she made them in the strongest way.
No, and I repeat again, his own national security advisor, former president, chief of staff in the White House, and military chiefs kind of agree with Lammy's analysis. Then there's not going to be a lot of road to which for Kemi Burdenock to revisit it, unless of course she's doing what Robert Jenner did during leadership election and thinking first of the people that lean towards reform as opposed to people that she needs to tempt back into the Tory fold.
Well, that's potentially why she's done this and why she's gone on this today. And of course, we know that Nigel Farage is going to be a real thorn Keir Starmer's side from now on because of the relationship. Yeah, because of the relationship that he already has with Donald Trump and with Donald Trump's top team. So that's going to be really difficult for, I think, Keir Starmer to navigate. I think Kemi Burdenock will be right to anticipate where that's going, but it didn't feel like today was the day to sort of talk about this, and it didn't feel quite right for her sort of to go in. I think his response saying, look, today's a day which we're going to work together on a range of issues. Keir Starmer is ever the pragmatist, ever the sort of,
Well, that's a really interesting point. It's also just while we're on the cultural stuff, you could quote Boris Johnson talking about Donald Trump to almost as much effect as you could quite David Lammy.
Yeah, and anyone on the Conservative Party privately, and many publicly, will say the same thing about Donald Trump.
So an odd gambit, but it highlights, and I don't know that I agree with you much about Farage having a particular role to play, because you can be Donald Trump's sworn enemy on a Monday, as Elon Musk was, and his best friend by Friday. So that perhaps explains why the warm words have been issued, as Arthur Snell suggested to us a little bit earlier, perhaps a little prematurely, certainly a little earlier than convention. But this is the interesting thing, because Starmer and his team are in charge of navigating Trump's caprices, whether it's tariffs or trade wars. A few people pointing out to me that it's a bit rich of Burdenock to talk about trade deals when she's demonstrated her failure to understand the difference between a trade deal and a meaningless memo of understanding. But again, we can park that for another day. Starmer's this is a bit of a nightmare to be dealing with a rat in a sack, but a rat in a sack who has quite a lot of influence and power over your own country. I mean, America is not our biggest trade partner. That's the European Union. Again, something else I think Burdenock got wrong, unless she's splitting the
not sure she said the word country. We're not sure she said the word trade bloc.
But Starmer can't, and nor can Lammy, come out and say what they really think about this man, because they have to do business.
That's
with
all
him.
being government. That's just
Isn't
they've
it?
got to suck it up and realise that this is the way to do grown-up politics.
But they do.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think anybody really grudges that from Keir Starmer and his team. And actually, like speaking to people in Downing Street, speaking to people in the Foreign Office over the last few weeks, and many people weren't quite ready for the idea of a Trump victory, but it was there in the back of people's minds that this could happen. But with Donald Trump, there's a lot of talk, but does he walk the walk? And they're not quite sure that he's going to go as far on NATO as he says, is going to be pushing for peace deal in Ukraine, is going to be quite as bad as they think. Look, I mean, obviously, look, I'm not saying that 4 years of Donald Trump didn't cause some chaos. Of course it did. But did Donald Trump do all of the things that he says he's going to do in an election campaign? Donald Trump campaigning is totally different to Donald Trump in office.
In office, except for the bits that Vladimir Putin wants, I think we should.
Yeah, and that's going to be a really dangerous thing to watch for.
The most intelligent. Well, look, a quick roundup of messages that have come in, and if you want to balance it, then you've got time to do so. 84850 is the number you need to leaven this particular feast. So Shannon kicks things off. This is just starting from roughly when Kemi Burdenock got to her feet. Real-time commentary from LBC listeners. This isn't the slam dunk she thinks it is. Wow, she's really sucking up to Trump. Is Kemi Burdenock the new leader of the opposition or Trump's ambassador to the UK? Liam is my favourite so far. She's making a real muck mess of this.
Like that a lot.
He literally just said he would make that defence commitment. Ben noticed that. Kemi didn't. Bloody hell, writes Becky. Is she okay? Did someone upset her this morning? That's her default position, I think. Is she really the best the Tories could find? Burdenock is a total, can I say that word? Weapon? I think I can. I have now. Graceless, charmless, no sense of irony. But they're not reading scripted questions about scripted answers. A risible hypocrisy. Interesting that Kemi Burdenock should ask questions about trade deals. There is evidence that she does not know the difference between trade deals and memorandums of understanding. Keith in Poland there, a man after my own heart. I feel like I just watched one of those cartoons where one character holds the head of the opponent and the opponent just punches thin air. Burdenock can land a single line on Starmer. He literally just did make a commitment to 2.5% defence spending. Hate to say Burdenock did a good job. Clear voice and some good points made from me. What an absolute embarrassment. Anyone watching outside the UK will think we are a joke after Burdenock's performance. I've got to stop now, there's so many, but we leave it with this one. Didn't the Tories say that they voted for Burdenock because she would be good at PMQs? Does this mean that we're about to have another Tory leadership race soon?
Please, no. But a 5-month one, I'm really not ready for that anytime soon. But look, she's still smiling when the cameras cut with her. She's going to feel that went well.